I wanted to lead by example. I wanted people to see that if I could do it, they could do it too. And I wanted to kind of carve out that pathway for them. I went from dancing to then doing endurance sports. And then that's when I started delving more and more in the world of hiking and outdoor sports, and until eventually I climbed the highest mountain in the world.
Nelly Attar has climbed more than 30 notable peaks around the world, including Mount Everest. But her journey to these intense mountaineering expeditions had an unconventional origin: dance. Nelly grew up dancing along to YouTube videos, and eventually she opened the first dance studio in Saudi Arabia, which at the time was pretty revolutionary. Along the way, Nelly fell in love with all different types of movement, from group fitness classes to weightlifting and hiking. These disciplines laid the groundwork for Nelly's mountaineering career. She's broken multiple records for her ascents, and in 2022, Nelly became the first Arab to summit K2, which is known as the world's most dangerous mountain. I'm Shelby Stanger, and this is Wild Ideas Worth Living, an REI Co-op Studios production presented by Capital One and the REI Co-op MasterCard. Nelly Attar, welcome to Wild Ideas Worth Living. You have truly lived a wild life, so I'm really excited to talk to you today. Where are you right now?
I am tuning in from Dubai, United Arab Emirates.
I think you're our first guest that's tuning in from Dubai.
Amazing.
Tell us a little bit about where you grew up.
So I was born and raised in Saudi Arabia, in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. And I grew up in what was once considered the least active country in the world. I was always brought up in a desert environment. We had sports in school on and off. Back then, Saudi was quite conservative, especially when it came to women and girls doing outdoor activities. Just to give you some context, everything was segregated. Schools were segregated. Restaurants were segregated. In terms of entertainment activities, we didn't have cinemas. The malls were also segregated. And so sports wasn't really part of our daily living. It was, something that would happen every now and then. But I just remember from when I was a kid, I loved going on desert walks with my dad. So we basically used to drive out for an hour and a half, and it would be a few families coming together. And we used to run something called an istiraha, which is basically a little desert camp out. And then we'd just go for very recreational walks for an hour because it's quite warm. And I just loved nature.
Those desert walks with her family left a big impression on Nelly. Her father had a free spirit just like she did and always encouraged her to get outside and move. When she was 17, Nelly's dad invited her to climb Mount Kenya, a 5,000-meter peak in Africa. While the trek to the top was a lot harder than they expected, she enjoyed how much it pushed her out of her comfort zone. Not long after that trip, Nelly left Saudi Arabia for university. For the first time in her life, she had access to all kinds of sports and dance classes. So, while you were in college or university, is that where you first discovered movement in a big way?
When I moved to university, I'm like, yay, this is Disneyland for me because I have all these options, dance classes. I got into breakdancing. And then that kind of took a turn. When I went to do my master's, I moved to the UK. And I've always dealt with anxiety. I've always had anxiety since I was a kid. And I actually had been to the psychologist several times when I was a kid and given anti-anxiety pills. But it was only when I was in the UK that I started training. I would go to the gym and I started training. And I started training because I wanted to maintain a good shape. But then I realized, actually, I got so much more out of training, which is helping my mental health. It really, really helped calm me down. It helped me see my potential. And that was the start of my, training journey.
Nelly loved movement in all its forms. At the gym, she jumped into group fitness classes, experimented with weights and running, and rediscovered her love for dance. That passion eventually led her to become a certified dance fitness instructor. After finishing school, Nelly worked as a psychologist in a hospital in Saudi Arabia, and she started to teach dance classes to her colleagues after work. At this time, dance studios and women's gyms weren't officially licensed in Saudi, but luckily, Nelly was able to teach within the hospital. These classes were like Zumba meets Afrobeats and hip hop. Nelly loved teaching and realized that she wanted to work as an instructor and coach full time. While she was between jobs, Nelly decided to turn to nature and climb Mount Kilimanjaro. It was a chance to test her training, challenge herself, and see what her body and mind were capable of. That climb would mark the start of her mountaineering journey. Will you tell me first how you got to Kilimanjaro?
How did I get to Kilimanjaro? So it was always in my mind that I wanted to do some big hike again. And what better than Kilimanjaro? And I loved it. I loved it because it kind of put all my training to test. At that, like by then I was already properly training. I was actually a CrossFit instructor as well, not just dance instructor, CrossFit instructor, personal trainer, spinning instructor. And so it was really nice to see how my body performed on a high mountain, high altitude, and in environments and conditions that were completely different to what I'm used to. So it just, I felt like all mountains were going to be that way. Obviously, I didn't know what was to come, but I'm like, okay, I want to do more of this.
Did you have a guide? Did you have a group of friends that you did this with? Like, how did you get there?
I hiked or climbed Kilimanjaro with about 3 people, friends from Saudi. And there was a bunch of guides, of course, and porters. And so, yeah, we climbed Kilimanjaro through like a commercial company. And it was a beautiful experience. I really enjoyed it. And I mean, the only night that I felt challenged was summit night because of the cold, but I don't remember having any issues with the altitude. It was more just like such a long day.
That's amazing. But you're well trained for it with all the other things you did. When does the second mountain that you decide to embark on come into picture? How many years later?
And the second mountain was literally a year later, which is Mount Everest, the highest peak in Europe. And I remember when deciding on Elbrus, there was the option to do the south route, which is a more commercial route, and you are able to take cable cars up to a certain extent. There's more campsites along the way, or you can take the north route, where I think it's just 2 campsites, and you basically have a much bigger summit day. It's almost 2,000 meters. I'm like, oh, it seems more challenging, so I'm going to do that. And
of course you did.
Of course I did. I don't think I was prepared, but that taught me that I have a lot of mental strength, because although physically I was not ready for it, giving up was not an option. I just kept going and going and going and going. And yeah, I came back. And after I forgot the pain and the misery of that night, I'm like, I want to do more of this. And I don't think I was in great shape for Elbrus. I say this now because when I started to train smarter, it made a huge difference for how I felt on the mountain. Like I would suffer a lot more back then, but I always knew that I was not going to give up. I always felt like I still have a lot within me. You just have to dig deeper. You just have to dig deeper.
With each mountain, Nelly discovered her potential was greater than she realized. Back at home, the social and political climate in Saudi Arabia began to create new opportunities for women, and Nelly opened the country's first dance studio. She taught other women the joy and power of movement while continuing to push her own limits in the mountains. Within a few years of her trek up Kilimanjaro, she climbed several 6,000 and 7,000 meter peaks. Soon enough, Nelly came up with a wild idea to attempt Mount Everest. How did you get to Everest?
A friend that I started to climb with more and more consistently, a friend named Sharif, and I were having dinner, and he's like, Nelly, I think I know what our next adventure should be. And I was like, what? And then he says, Everest. And I was like, are you out of your mind? What do you mean Everest? We're not ready. How are we ever going to get there? It's not something I'm interested in doing. I come back home that night and I couldn't sleep. And I was like, you know what? This is why. Because I need to go do this. Can't sleep because I have all these questions about how terrifying that idea is. So I wake up in the morning and I get my mom's blessing. I'm like, Mom, I think I'm going to do Everest next year. Do you think it's a good idea? Got her blessing before this whole idea turned into a dream and then turned into reality.
So what did your training look like?
My training was very creative. I had to work with the environment I was in. Stairmaster, running on a treadmill.
How long are you on the Stairmaster and treadmill for?
at least an hour and a half, sometimes up to 3 hours.
What would you do during that time? Would you listen to podcasts? Would you listen to books? Would you
Watch
listen to
movies.
music?
I would watch movies of people climbing Everest. And so, like, I was visualizing, I was feeling, I would cry sometimes. I really needed to feel it because it really felt like a different world to me. I was sitting here training indoors, in gyms that were relatively empty. And here I am, like, dying on a Stairmaster machine or treadmill. So I really had to create that zone that would help me keep going. Sometimes I'd have my friends, and this till today is one of my approaches. Like, when I have these long sessions, it's always nicer to have friends that come and join. And the friend could come for an hour and then have another 2 hours. It's better than just doing it 3 hours on my own. And so, yeah, I'd spend 3 hours on a Stairmaster sometimes, running on a treadmill. And then sometimes we drive far out into the desert where I can do a bit of hiking. There was like a trail called Camel Trail, a tiny hill, but that was the most elevation I could get. So I would repeat that like 5, 6 times with a heavy pack. And yeah, strength sessions mainly targeting my legs and my glutes. And so my week would be anywhere from like 12 to about 20 hours of training. A lot of it was indoors, but the trail running and the hiking was outdoors.
Everest is expensive. How do you fund this?
Sponsorship. I thought sponsorship was going to be easier because at the time, no. Yeah. Because not.
Sorry, I laugh because this is what everybody thinks. We all think it's going to be so easy to get sponsored.
Absolutely. And at the time I thought, because not many people in the region do this and because it's such a grand idea, and no one living in Saudi at the time was actually doing this as a woman. So I thought, yeah, it's going to be easy. And I had to pay a deposit. And I'm like, okay, I'm paying a deposit. I'll get that back. I ended up getting a small sponsorship fee relative to the amount that I paid. I think it was a quarter of the overall fee. I was lucky to have found that brand. But yeah, I remember maybe 2, 3 weeks before doing Everest, I broke down. I broke down to my life coach. I had a life coach that I was working with. And I was just like, why am I doing this? Why? Why am I here? Like, I have to spend so much money on a climb, one climb, and I don't even know if I'm going to make it to this climb. Is it even worth it? Who am I proving something to? What do I have to prove for people? Why am I doing this? So I had an existential crisis. I still remember that day. I was sitting and crying at Move, and I locked myself in a room so no one can see me. And I didn't want my parents to know this because my parents were questioning why I was going for the same reason. They're like, now you're putting so much money into this. And like the risks are high. And the closer I got to Everest, my family started to get really worried. They said yes initially because I think it was still so far-fetched. It was a year away. But the closer I got, I feel like everyone started to get worried. And then I didn't lock in the money and I had to pay the rest on my own.
So what was it like to climb Everest?
How was the experience? It was an incredible journey. It really was a life-changing journey. Not because of the summit, not because it's Everest, but because I got to have this big purpose that year. I had to work through so many challenges, living in Saudi at the time. And it became like a community mission because so many people came on board to help me train. So it also helped other women get active. I really felt like I was taking all these women with me from Saudi to the top of the world. And then that was the first time that I really tested my potential. I truly tested myself in environments that were very foreign to me. And I felt like I grew up in Saudi in a bubble. It was very sheltered. It was very safe, especially for women because we couldn't drive. We didn't really have autonomy in our daily lives. And so doing that for me meant so much more than just the climb.
Do you have a day on Everest that you remember that you'll never forget? Like whether it's a visual thing or a really scary moment or just something that really struck out about that trip?
I kind of danced my way through Everest. And I used to, like when I was on Everest, I was so afraid. I was so worried. But my approach to it was make every day count. Have a good time. So I would always go around, connect with people. I was everywhere. I was dancing. I was playing cards. I was journaling, watch movies. Like I didn't just want to think of that one objective and fixate on that. As we're building towards that objective, make every day count. And that's why it was such a meaningful journey.
So are you having dance-offs with like the other climbers and the Sherpas, or are you just filming yourself dancing to like do it back home?
No. I was having someone film me dance so that I would share it with people back home and we share it on the page. But then also I was dancing with Sherpas. Like anytime there was an opportunity for for like a group dance, of course, I was the one that stirs everything. And, I was dancing everywhere, actually. Sometimes I made a fool out of myself, but I was dancing everywhere.
I love it. I love it. I love it. What did it look like at the top?
Of Everest, I don't remember. I actually don't remember. The summit day was so overwhelming for me. It was one of the busiest days on Everest. I think it was the second or the third deadliest season on Everest. 16 people had died. It was, that year where the picture came out of the big queue. We climbed the second day, but we still had a massive queue. And it was mainly because the weather window narrowed in and all climbers had to go up on the same 2 days. And just going up the second day, we saw so many people that had died the day before. And I was absolutely petrified, absolutely petrified. And I was just thinking, all these people are here for the same reason. No one thought they're going to die. And I really felt like I wanted to turn around because it's a very hostile environment. I don't know what's going to happen. Yeah, it was all fun and games up until this point, but is it still fun and games? Like, what do? I really was puzzled. And if anything, that gave me more drive to just move faster and get the day over with or the night over with. When we got to the summit, we had a really big group, and obviously we were not waiting for each other, but I was just waiting for some of the girls to arrive because we're a group of 4 Arab women. But when I got to the top, I actually don't remember what the top looks like. I don't. I just remember thinking, I'm terrified. I'm happy I made it. I'm relieved, but this is just halfway. We have to go back down.
Many mountaineers say that descending a mountain can be just as challenging as climbing it. Nelly and her group made it down safely, but the intensity of the experience was overwhelming. Everest tested Nelly's courage, focus, and resilience, and it left her wondering how she could challenge herself further. Let's play a game. If you could turn your everyday spending into limitless possibilities, what gear or apparel would you grab? What ticket would you book? Which wild idea would you make a reality? All right, I'll go first. If I could go anywhere and do anything like right now, I'd pack my bag for a surfing and hiking trip to Chile. The good news is that the REI Co-op MasterCard is the perfect card to support wild ideas like mine. It has you covered with rewards and benefits that encourage your love of the outdoors. This card is exclusively for REI Co-op members, taking your membership even further with card rewards on every single purchase, whether you're shopping at REI or anywhere else. And you can redeem your card rewards as you earn them, so you can finally grab those new hiking boots you've been eyeing, stock up on snacks, and keep more cash in your pocket. Head over to rei.com/mastercard-podcast to see if you're pre-approved today. That's rei.com/mastercard-podcast. Terms apply. Hey, Wild Ideas listeners, there's a new podcast coming out that I think you'll want to check out. It's called Our Common Nature from WNYC. On the show, Yo-Yo Ma and Anna Gonzalez travel across the country, from a sunrise ceremony with the Wabanaki in Maine to the Smoky Mountains, where Cherokee leaders are restoring the name Kuwohi, to the Yukon River, where Alaska Native communities fight to save salmon. Through music and story, they show how culture connects us to nature. Listen to Our Common Nature wherever you get your podcasts. Nelly Attar is a world-class, record-setting mountaineer. Her first ascent took place on Mount Kenya with her father, where she fell in love with pushing her limits. Nelly went on to summit Kilimanjaro, Elbrus, and Aconcagua. In 2019, she summited Mount Everest and earned recognition across the Middle East. But just as her career was taking off, Nelly experienced a loss that changed everything.
After Everest 2019, I was literally on top of the world. And my dad was so proud. My dad was so, so proud. His little girl that he used to take to the desert for desert walks has, climbed the highest mountain in the world. That was 2019. In 2020, I lost my dad to COVID, and my entire world changed. COVID affected my business, COVID affected all of our lives. And I thought that was the hardest thing that I would have to endure that year with all these changes. And then I lose my dad, and it shifted my world entirely. Um, and I just needed to be with myself and come back to myself and just take care of myself. And I decided to close my dance studio, which was a very, very hard decision. I didn't want to ride out COVID. I actually just felt like my heart wasn't there anymore. I wanted to leave. I wanted to leave Saudi as well and see what other opportunities lie out there. And I was like, you know what? Life has changed. If I'm not going to jump on this opportunity now, then I don't know when. So I just decided to close the dance studio. That's when I started to come to the UAE a lot, just to explore what I can do with sports here. And then that's when we attempted Denali. Denali was the only goal that had made me feel happy. Nothing made me feel happy. I lost so much weight. I lost about 10 kilograms because I couldn't eat. I just kept training, and I kept training for nothing really. And then I remember when my friend suggested, let's do Denali. That was the first time I had a smile on my face. And then I went and cried because I'm like, I can't believe I smiled. I feel guilty for smiling so soon. But then that gave me purpose, and I started to train, and like it was cathartic. It was really like a release for me. And although we didn't summit Denali, I dreamt of my dad every single day on Denali. And it was very soulful for me. I didn't care about the summit. I cared that it helped me get out of this really dark hole while also still making me feel so connected to my dad. And it was after Denali that I thought of K2. And it was the year mark of my dad passing away, November 2, 2021. I was sitting in Egypt for a project. I was there, a work project. And I was just sitting in the coffee shop, and I'm like, I'm going to do K2. I want to do something big, something that scares me, something of a completely different scale, something that will have me training in a way that I've never trained, because training is cathartic for me. And I want to climb through life again, because I felt like that was the darkest year of my life. And I wanted to do something that honors my dad. And so K2 came into mind, and that's where the journey of K2 started.
And maybe you could just describe a little bit the difference between K2 and Everest for people who don't know.
So Everest, highest peak in the world, sits at 8,848 meters. K2 is 8,611 meters above sea level. So there's like a 200-meter difference. But K2 is a lot more dangerous because of the terrain, because of when it's a lot more exposed, it's a lot less commercialized. There's a lot more hazards with weather, and a lot more environmental hazards like rockfall, avalanches. And with all these factors combined, it just makes K2 a lot more dangerous. And then it's also a lot more difficult to climb because it's mixed climbing. It's ice, rock, snow, constant change between these three elements. Everest is like a snow slope that you're moving up. K2 is a lot more demanding, a lot more demanding. And the angle at which K2 sits, it's a lot steeper. And because it's less commercial, if anything goes wrong, if anything happens, you're not going to have rescue, maybe for a few days.
That's amazing. Tell me a little bit more about your training. Like, what did it look like every day?
I worked with a brilliant coach. He was in the special forces, so his training was really, really different. And I wanted someone that really would help me push my limits in a way that I had never done before. And my training was about 30 hours a week sometimes. Like, yeah, my training was insane. And I was training in sand dunes. I was training in 45 degrees. Like, so many times I was so close to fainting. But I'd always think, suffer now, summit later. Suffer now, summit later. And that experience, the experience to K2, was also so much more than just the climb. The climb was like maybe the smaller aspect of it. It was so much more than the climb. It was a healing journey for me through my grief. It was also, this was what actually put my brand out there, because no one understood what K2 was. And I didn't care if they didn't understand. I'm like, okay, I'm still going to do it anyways. And the people that knew what K2 was were like, oh, girl, you're not going to do it. You don't have the experience. What are you thinking? My friends tried to convince me out of it. I just knew what I needed to do, and that was it. And I had one focus.
And how did you fund this trip?
How did I fund this trip? So K2 again. Um, this time around, I had a media kit, so I was a lot more professional with my approach. I had a few assets that I blasted to different companies, but then I also created a sponsorship package that I would customize for different companies. And I was just relentless. I applied to so many companies, got so many rejections, maybe over 200 companies. And I just felt like I'll find the right one.
I love that you're telling me this because people don't realize that to do a wild idea, it's expensive and you have to pitch yourself. And you're going to get a lot of no's.
And you can't take it personal. So this was the shift that I had. Like, I can't take this personal. I just have to be relentless. Applied to so many companies. And it was in my luck. It was in my favor that these companies turned me down because eventually the right companies came on board. And it was so close in time. So I had to pay my deposit. And here we go again. I don't have a sponsor. And my mom was just going out of her mind. She's like, Nelly, you close your dance studio. You don't have a steady source of income. You're in between countries. You don't really have stability. Do you really want to invest your savings on this climb? Like, what are you doing? What are you doing? And I remember this was, so like a month before K2, it was Ramadan. It was the month that we fast. So I already had other challenges of fasting all day and then having to train at midnight and night. And I still had to put in those hours because this was the peak training for me. I couldn't cut back on the hours. And here I was training at like 2 a.m. Because I was fasting in the day. So like we fast from sunrise to sunset. And so I already had that. And then I had the issue of like not finding sponsors. And like in a month I had K2. But I kept saying, trust the process, trust the process.
After months of relentless training and countless setbacks, Nelly finally secured the funding and she set out for Pakistan in June of 2022. The trek into K2's base camp was challenging, and she had to wait there for a week for a weather window to open up. Then, on July 22nd, Nelly became the first Arab to summit K2. Tell me a little bit about K2. What was it like?
K2, it was a lot more. So the hike to K2 base camp alone is a lot more rugged and challenging than hiking up to Everest base camp. It's longer in distance. The terrain is a lot more rugged, unforgiving. And then almost all of us got sick. The water was contaminated or the food was contaminated. So it just felt more hostile and harder than getting to Everest base camp. I remember when I got to K2 base camp, I passed out because I felt really sick. I just had a stomach bug. So as soon as I got there, I had to take antibiotics. And then being on K2, we don't spend as much time as we do on Everest because the risks are so much higher. So we only acclimatize by just doing 2 rotations, 1 rotation up and then the summit rotation. So the first rotation up, it was hard. It was really, really hard, like really steep climbing. You're terrified, constantly terrified because there's rock fall either from people kicking rocks down or from like just snow melting and a rock, like flying from 1,000 meters above you, which can kill you. So I was really scared on a different level. I think I was more experienced now. I think I was more aware of the risks, but also the risks were a lot higher. There's a 25% chance of you not coming back from K2 versus Everest, which is 10% chance. So I was terrified, but then also I just kept thinking I had been through the hardest thing in my life. I had been through grief. And if I'm here today and if I can go through grief, I can go through anything. And it would just like, we moved in crazy like conditions at times where the visibility was just like less than a meter. At one point, I remember I was rappelling and the rope broke off and I could die that way. But then immediately, I don't know how I had such a fast reaction time and I grabbed the ropes right next to me. And then I kept thinking, Allah's with me. Everything is okay. And that's what kept me going.
That's crazy. What was the best part about K2?
Getting to the summit. Very different experience than Everest, I think.
So this time you saw it.
This time I saw it, and the build up to get to the summit was really, really challenging. I think it was a lot less fun than Everest. But then the summit was incredible. The summit was incredible because actually there were another 4 Arabs attempting K2 the same season, and I didn't know. I mean, everyone just kind of like ended up announcing it a month before K2, which was wonderful because it felt like there was a piece of home with me. But then also, who knew who was going to make it to the top first? And I kept reminding myself the most important thing is safety. And then making it to the summit, that's like an icing on the cake. And then if I get to make history, that's just like, wow. But that is beyond my control and I'm not even going to think of that. And I remember like consciously telling myself over and over again because I don't want my mind to go there. And so the way things worked out were just insane because all the teams moved before us when the weather started to clear and we were the last team to move. So I'm like, okay, forget making history, but that's okay as long as I'm safe. And so we move up and the days were hard, but the climbs were incredible. Like every day that was hard just felt really meaningful. And then all the teams got stuck. They got delayed at Camp 3 because the ropes weren't fixed. And so we caught up to everyone on Camp 3. And then it was our team that fixed the lines. And so on summit day, it was our team that was planning everything for everyone. All the teams had moved before us. We wanted the traffic to kind of go ahead of us. And I just felt really good on summit day. I was in game mode. I've never felt like this. I was in a state of flow that I lost my Sherpa and guide for an hour and a half. I just moved really fast. I really didn't realize that there was no one behind me. There was basically a star that I thought was lights. I thought it was someone's head torch. So I kept thinking, oh, that's my next target. That's my next target. But I couldn't reach that target. And I took over everyone. And then my guide was like, we're on the summit ridge. I'm like, what's this? He's like, that's a star. I'm like, oh my God. Maybe that was my dad. Maybe that was my guiding light. And we get to the summit. I drop my bag and I cry for 20 minutes. I couldn't stop crying. Because we're the first people up there. I couldn't stop crying. This was much bigger than me making it to K2. It was everything. It was my dad climbing with me. I literally felt like my dad was with me. It was not just for my family. It was for my country. It was for the Arab region. It's for Arab women. So it was just like one of the best moments of my life.
What advice do you have for someone who wants to chase a wild idea, whatever it looks like to them?
Good question. It's going to be a hard journey. But no risk, no reward. You will never know unless you try. And I think the best things in life for me have come through taking risks. And I've pivoted so many times, but I've had wild ideas that I pursued, and they took me to places that are much further than I would have ever imagined. I started with dance classes in the hospital. I ended up launching Saudi's first dance studio. I started with Kilimanjaro. I ended up becoming the first Lebanese to climb the world's 5 highest peaks. And so start with where you are today and what you have. And don't worry about how it will unfold. It will unfold. You take one step, the next step unravels. But just start with where you are and pursue it.
To learn more about Nelly, check her out on Instagram at Nelly Attar. That's NELLYATTAR. She is a great follow and so inspirational. I think you'll love her page. Wild Ideas Worth Living is part of the REI Podcast Network. It's hosted by me, Shelby Stanger, produced by Annie Fassler, Sylvia Thomas, and Sam Piers-Nitzberg of Puddle Creative. Our senior producer is Jenny Barber. Our executive producers are Paolo Motola and Joe Crosby. As always, we love it when you follow the show, take time to rate it, and write a review wherever you listen. And remember, some of the best adventures happen when you follow your wildest ideas.